Greetings from the World Council of Churches Communications Department. My name is Marcelo Schneider, and I'm here to interview the WCC Economic and Ecological Justice team on their participation on the Ecumenical International Youth Day Hackathon in mid-August this year. The hackathon was a collaborative exchange of ideas among young people that lasted for over 4 hours online. And for this conversation, I have here with me Dr. Manoj, who coordinates the Ecumenical Advocacy Alliance of the World Council of Churches, Athena Peralta, who is the WCC Program Executive for Economic and Ecological Justice. Dr. Louk Adrianos is the WCC Consultant for Care for Creation, Sustainability and Climate Change. Henrik Grape, who coordinates the WCC Working Group on Climate Change, and Dinesh Suna, who is the coordinator of the WCC's Ecumenical Water Network. Dr. Manoj Kurian, there has been a youth hackathon. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how the climate and economic justice team was involved in that?
Yes, thank you, Marcelo. I'm Manoj Kurian. I coordinate the WCC Ecumenical Advocacy Alliance. The hackathon is actually exploring ways together to find concrete solutions. So this event on the International Youth Day brought together youth from all over the world in a 5-hour-long process, and this is very carefully planned and done, where it was not a few people talking, but rather there were a number of facilitators who facilitated 1-hour-long discussions, and they had guides, and the facilitation was to draw out the solutions that came from the participants. And for this, during this process, there were also note takers. The note takers who took down the notes and they brought these things together. So at the end of every 1-hour session, there was a gap for note takers to consolidate this. And so these cycles went on during the day, and it was very, very well done because it covered different time zones. So people from all over the world could come during different times. And towards the end, the note takers and the general note takers consolidated all the inputs and they brought it together. So it was a very innovative and imaginative process, which brought a lot of creativity and solutions and ideas from the participants. So it was truly a hackathon, because hackathon, when people think of, is usually software, but it's not just on computers, but even for ideas, for climate justice. We can bring about hackathons because solutions are kind of brought out from the youth, grounded solutions, and they are taken up. So it is not top-down, but truly a bottom-up approach.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. It was really one of the most striking aspects of this experience was the direct access that the young people had to speak up. The real proactivity, the space that was given, time and space to really speak up and share their own ideas. Athena Peralta, did you sense that in the discussions there was a clear link, even for young people, between the discussion on climate emergency and economic justice, in a sense?
Thank you so much, Marcelo, for that question. I am Athena Peralta, and I serve as Program Executive for Economic and Ecological Justice at the WCC. So it was my privilege to join some of the discussions. And in these discussions, young people were reflecting on their own carbon footprints. And so this was the usual entry point to these questions. How, for instance, do our consumption habits contribute to carbon emissions? How do our mobility habits contribute to carbon emissions? And from there, there was a link from our own carbon footprints to the role of corporations. For instance, we also spoke of how corporations actually contribute to the bulk of emissions. There was a Guardian study talking about 100 corporations contributing to as much as 70% of global emissions. But the other entry point as well would be the reports of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And in particular, I think it was the 2018 report of the IPCC, which spoke about the need for deep-seated transformations in our economic system if we are to meet the Paris goals of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And so young people clearly understood the need for radical changes in our economic system to address the climate crisis.
Thank you, Athena. Dinesh, you are the coordinator of the Ecumenical Water Network, and of course, water is a big issue in this whole discussion. How can you share a little bit more to us about how the water justice agenda was brought up into this discussion?
It was, as shared by colleagues, a very interesting event. And of course, the theme was around climate change and care for creation. And we cannot take out the issues around water when we talk about discourses around climate change, because the simple fact is climate change manifests itself through water, either too much of it through floods and storms and cyclones, etc., or too little of it through droughts and so on. And therefore, it was interesting to draw the attention of the also the youngsters who came from different parts of the world, having experienced these increased and frequent extreme weather events related to water as a result of climate change. We also talked when there was questions coming to the colleagues around us as experts on the subject matter during the breakout rooms. Some questions were around this linkage as well. And the participants were kind of really surprised to see that by 2025, about 2/3 of world's population may experience a very high level of water stress. And many major cities that they came from are predicted to run out of groundwater very soon. And the adaptation measures that are to be taken also mostly around water. And therefore, the linkage was pretty strong and the participants underlined it.
Thank you, Dinesh. Louk, this whole discussion on climate change, climate emergency, economic justice, the role of water justice in this sense. What is the role of young people in caring for God's creation?
Your question is very interesting, and I think the most important one, because our main focus is to engage the churches and especially the youth in the care for creation. And especially from the Youth Hackathon initiative 2 weeks ago, we can see that the role of the youth or young people in churches and young Christians everywhere is vital for achieving our hope to restore the creation and to realize our call, which is to care for God's creation. The hackathon was kind of new for me, and I think for some people as well, but it was a very inspiring tool to engage the youth, because you use technologies and you use all incentives to call together all the youth to express themselves and also to deliver their power and passion for action to the care for creation. So I would say that as the word hackathon is combining the hacking and marathon, I think the Greek marathon runners, we can have an idea that the marathon runner would achieve his goal if he has a very good heart, a very well-trained heart. And I would say that the young people is the heart of this attempt to care for recreation. If young people is not fully trained and fully given the ability to act and to express themselves, the speed of our action to care for recreation would be not as emergent as we expect, because we are living in a climate emergency. We need fast change from every one of us and from our churches and from the world. So the youth is the one that that can bring this change in a fast way and in the proper way. So I'm happy that the Youth Hackathon for Climate Justice took place to help on that issue and that hope also.
Thank you, Louk. I'm moving on now to the another team member, Henrik Grape. Some of the young participants, they raise, really specific questions on how the United Nations climate talks, how does this work? What's the procedure and how can our voices get that far in terms of being heard in a process like that? So my question will be, how can this whole agenda of climate emergency in the United Nations level be explained in a way that young people not only feel that they understand it, but encouraged to join?
Yeah, thank you for the question, because I think this is one of the most sort of important questions to address, because climate change and the effects of climate change will be in the hands of the youth today. Already we see that climate change is happening, but also to see the large impact on climate change will be when this youth generation will be sort of behind the steering wheel of their time. So if their voices are not heard, I think it will be very much generating from the interest of people of today, of those in power today. And many of those in power today are more interested to protect what they have and not so interested in to look to the future. I also think that youth play an important part because they often have a more direct understanding of what science tells us. The IPCC report is very clear, and if you read it with a kind of youth mind, you understand that we have to do big things now. I think that old gray-haired people like me are sort of more reluctant to really understand how important this science is. So I think that a youth is important in sort of to tap on the back on each one of us to say, hey, it's us who's going to have to deal with this later. So you better get your act together now. And I think that is what youth have to do. And I think that youth often are closer also to hope for the future, not only to see what is very annoying about not acting now, but also to have some hope for the future. And I think that is a hope that is based both on anger and courage. I mean, you must be angry today if you are a youth and you understand the latest IPCC report. It triggers you to actually say, this is so very wrong. And the youth movement over the last years has really spoken out about this, but also to have a hope that is founded in or grounded in something that we could call courage to actually do something about it. So I think that the voice of the youth must be heard on the COP26, and as faith communities, I think that is one of our roles, to actually bring the youth voices, to push the leaders to be more brave and to have greater ambitions for the COP26 to fulfill the Paris Agreement, to stay below 1.5 degrees. And everybody have to do a lot to achieve that. So without the youth, I think it's much, much harder. That we need to have the voice of the youth. And I think that the faith communities is one of the most important partners to bring those to the front line. I'm also very happy to see that we have youth representation in our delegation to the COP26, and I think that's go very well in line with what we are thinking about youth and climate change. So we try to walk the talk.
Thank you, Henrik. And this whole action, this whole discussion, this whole conversation is taking place in a very special moment for world Christianity, a moment that we have been calling in ecumenical circles as the season of creation. Louk, I'm going to just start with you, and then the others can jump in. What is the meaning of season of creation? If you can just explain that very shortly to our listeners and viewers, but also what does it mean to have a season of creation just on the eve of COP26, on a very special moment for humanity and the environment?
Yeah, thank you, Marcelo, for this question again. And of course, the season of creation is, I would say, a special moment for all Christians to unite in prayer and in action for the care for creation, and for also to celebrate the gift of God, and to realize the dependency of human being to God, and the dependency of human being to the creation. So season of creation is a very important moment for all Christians to unite their voice and their hope in caring for creation. And this year, it is fortunate for all of us to have it just closing before the COP26. And for this occasion, we will have a special season of creation celebration dedicated or run by the youth Christians from all over the world. So the youth voice and action will be raised just before the COP26, and also raised to be heard all over the world. So we thank God that this season of creation is growing, and the 500 million of Christians is heard and transmitting the groaning of all the creation and all the humanity, which we can see that in a state of emergency, socially, economically, and ecologically.
Thank you, Louk. Athena, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that engaging young people in discussions around climate and ecological justice is really a matter of justice. And as my colleague Henrik has already pointed out, it is young people who basically contributed least to the climate and larger ecological emergency, and yet they will be the ones who will be feeling the brunt of the consequences. So it's very much a matter of justice. But I also wanted to say that this emergency that is in front of us really demands that we think outside of the box. And young people are especially good at thinking outside of the box. And I think the hackathon that the young people organized is already proof that that young people bring solutions to the table that are not your usual solutions.
Yes, and I think if I may jump in, Athena, I mean, I totally underline young people a force to reckon with, particularly from Global South. Our countries are very young. The average age of the population is very young. And while the IPCC report that was just recently released levels the onus on the human being because of our actions today, we have reached this stage of climate emergency. And the young people are the one who are very much willing to take the risk and go that extra mile and demand for drastic change. If we hear to the young activists like Greta Thunberg or several others, calling out to the politicians for very drastic changes. That's a kind of a demonstration. And keeping that in mind, we at the WCC, of course, are capacitating the young people, for example, through Eco School that has started since 2017 from Africa, Latin America, Asia, and Pacific. We have been training and capacitating the young people. And today they are the Eco ambassadors, and many of them were present at the hackathon. The recently concluded World Water Week last week had a junior water prize that 2 young people also received. So these are kind of signs of positive change, thanks to the young people.
Yeah, I can also jump in there. I do agree what has been said before, but also to see that season of creation is something that goes along with this hard work that we are facing, that we are also rooted in our tradition, because I mean, we are standing in front of huge transformation of how we live together on this earth, and to have a good kind of ground for this action, we also need to go to our spiritual roots, our religious traditions. And season of creation is a good way of sort of rooting our commitments also from in our spirituality, in our theology, in our way of doing services. So I think those go pretty close together, and that also gives a sustainable way of dealing with it. You stand firm when you also stand in a theological tradition, because it's not only a climate crisis and a climate emergency. This is also a spiritual crisis, I would say. We have to go back and ask ourselves, what is life on earth? Why are we here? What should we do on this earth together? And we find it also important to also have this rooted in our spiritual tradition. And seasonal creation is a great way to help us to go there.
I totally agree with, and I support very much that Henrik has mentioned the ethical or spiritual crisis, which is the most, I would think also, I stress that it is the root of all this climate crisis and also ecological crisis and economic crisis. So I just want to add that the season of creation is one of the most important way to feed our youth and our church members of a spiritual food, which is necessary to direct, I would say, the youth power to change, because the youth has the power and the ability to do great things. But if it is not in the direction, the correct direction that God wants us to do, I would say here the call from the biblical call that is confirmed by the teaching of our Lord Jesus Christ, and what we say that what we do is for and through the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ. So season of creation is most of all this spiritual food to energize all Christians, and especially the youth, to have more power to do this difficult task, which is to change human being, to reconciliate again with God Creator. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. My last question is on the impact of this whole activity to your programmatic areas, to the activities that you do on a daily basis in the World Council of Churches structure. This was over 4-hour-long interaction with young people, with direct questions, with challenging questions, and a common effort, a joint effort to produce a few alternatives, a few suggestions to the whole discussion. What was the impact of this experience for your own portfolio, for the way you see the work from now on?
If I may jump in, I mean, I just want to further elaborate on the engagement of young people in the ecological issues and refer it to the Eco School again. We never had felt that kind of enthusiasm of engaging on these particular issues with this segment of the society, the young people, through as much as we enjoyed through the Eco School. And today, the products of this Eco School over the past 4 or 5 years, they have been taking larger responsibilities across the board and have been implementing these projects, that very small scale projects that we were able to support financially, and that is going a long way. So when we saw that the International Youth Day, they observed with a special theme on climate change and care for creation, it was of course a delight. And we would like to continue this momentum by engaging them as much as possible. I don't know what my other colleagues would like to concur.
Yeah, thanks, Dinesh. And I think the hackathon clearly pointed out that the issues of climate and ecological justice are really at the forefront of the agenda of young people. And this will definitely also change the way we begin to organize and think about our activities. Ensuring that youth have the space to talk, contribute to the ecumenical work on economic and ecological justice. But also on a personal level, I was enthused by the dynamism of the young people, the energy that they brought to these discussions, and I was particularly inspired how they were able to transform, feelings of anger, as Henrik pointed out, but not just anger, also grief, ecological grief, transforming these emotions into action, and we saw that quite clearly at the hackathon.
I think that we from faith communities, also from the Christian side, we have an example from Jesus telling us to look at the children, look at the child. And that is not something, I think we haven't taken that serious in our Christian tradition for some time now, because looking at the child is also looking, how should we react to what we see? And we should be led by youth in that respect, just as Athena just said. I think it's important for us as a faith community to also show that we are willing to do these changes to sort of incorporate the understanding that youth have. And for me, that is a theological issue or a theological consequences of Jesus Christ telling us to look at the child. We have to do this seriously. And as a faith communities, I think this is also have very much to do with climate change and the intergenerational justice that we are looking for.
Yeah, me too. I was fascinated and surprised by the passion of youth in engaging to care for creation, and especially during the hackathon event. I realized that our youth has all the necessary, I would say, wisdom to lead also this, I would say, task for the care for creation. As usually I'm saying to a student or to my kids, we wish that the youth would have the wisdom of the elders, and the elders will have the strength of the youth. So the ideal combination of to success something is to combine the strength and wisdom. Here we call wisdom the the word of God and the will of God, to understand it and to put it in practice in our life. So one special concrete solution from the youth that I remember very well, and I admire them for this solution, is they said, why we don't coordinate or put eco-theology in every church, and eco-theology lessons or curriculum in all institutions and in every aspect of our education. And that means that the youth has understood that eco-theology is very important tool also to achieve correctly the protection and the care for creation. Here, I would like just to transmit this is also kind of concrete solution from the youth, because we must recognize that eco-theology, even if we tried for many years to develop it and to make it into practice everywhere, it still has to be strengthened and supported so as to have the expected results, I would say, in practice and theoretically and theologically. Yeah, and my worry is that, for instance, in the country that I live, instead of promoting eco-theology and ethical courses, they try to separate ethical and spiritual courses to the academic one. And now I would see the danger of the future more clearly. Religion and science should become together as a unique tool for the better of the planet where we live, and then so forth is care for creation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louk. Athena, would you have some final remarks?
I would like to thank our youth executive, Ms. Joy Eva Bohol, and all the youth that participated in the hackathon for their important contributions, and specifically for challenging us, older people who are young at heart, but for challenging us to really face the climate emergency, for raising the important questions. We also would like to thank you for really the hopeful energy that you brought to these discussions, because, you know, for some of us, we are feeling a little bit jaded, tired, but the young people who participated in the hackathon really brought a different kind of energy and hope for the future. And for that, we want to express our deep thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for the time you gave for this short conversation, and best wishes on your work from now on climate justice, water justice, economic justice, and ecumenical advocacy as a whole. See you next time.